Chief, real quick, I don't really have a good understanding of your department. Can you just break like 3 engines, 2 trucks, 1
No,
truck?
we have
What do you have?
1 truck and 2 engines on duty.
Okay, so 2 and 1.
Yep, and each of them staffed with a company officer, which could be a lieutenant or a captain,
Right.
and 2 firemen.
Okay. Are guys assigned to a company?
So they can, as you get more seniority on the list, you kind of land in a spot where you don't move.
Gotcha.
When you're a new fireman,
Yeah.
you get moved a lot to fill, vacancies. There's a bunch of guys off on vacation, a bunch of guys out hurt, a bunch of, whatever. Then you'll come back. When you become a new driver, this group over here, this shift has 2 drivers off on vacation. You're
Right.
going there for 3 weeks.
Right.
And then you come back, and then you settle in. And then when you become a new officer, same thing. But that's all, they move around. But there's guys that are really good at being on a pumper,
Yeah.
and there's guys that are really good at being on the ladder truck.
Yeah, and you alluded to before the guys, they do their disciplines, right?
They the chiefs that are in charge of those shifts, they all see it, and they capitalize on those strengths.
Yeah.
They may still move them. If a guy's real strong on the engine, they may still move him over to the ladder truck for a couple of weeks, just so he remembers where all the tools are. Because he could still work overtime.
Right.
But there's guys that won't work overtime, on that other,
Right.
like,
Right.
I'm a truckie, I won't work overtime on a pumper.
Yeah.
Not because it's beneath him, but he's not comfortable with it.
Right, it's his thing. Right.
It's his thing. So our
That's his
guys,
craft.
they're
Yeah.
expected, because it's a small job. We only have 68 guys right now. They'll move all over. They'll work.
So
in
everybody's
each crew.
cross-trained.
They're each cross-trained
Right.
because they could work
Sure.
overtime.
Sure.
And if they don't turn it down, they better know what they're doing, even if it's not a rig they ride every shift.
Right.
They better know what they're
that's
doing.
2 engines in a truck, and then you're running 3 on a crew, or
3 on a crew is the minimum. Yep.
Okay, that's the minimum.
That's the minimum.
Okay.
So it's a driver,
Mhm.
fireman in the back seat,
Yeah.
and the officer.
So I find that to be pretty wild, and that's very commonplace across the country
Sounds like Englewood.
with staffing. Yeah, it sounds
It's
like
very
a
similar to
lot of these little cities, and I look at like the resourcefulness that those brothers have to have, right? Like
Yeah,
They
you're
have to
doing a
be
lot of
cross-trained.
stuff when you're running that. A lot of stuff you're doing by yourself.
absolutely, you got to
you
get
know,
that line to the 3rd
The
floor.
lieutenant on
Yeah.
that first engine is stretching a line by himself, and it don't matter what floor.
Right.
He's by himself until the guy riding in the back seat, until he has that hydrant hooked up,
Yep.
and he's got it turned on for the driver.
Right.
And then he now here you go. Talk about empowerment. Could be his very first fire on his very first week, and it is a fire. He gets that hydrant,
Yeah.
runs back to the rig, puts his pack on, grabs his tools. Now what's he got to do? It doesn't matter where the fire is in that building. He's got to go find his officer, and he's all by himself.
Right.
Yeah,
And
That's great.
sure, the guy can be making a push on the 3rd floor, and
he's got to crawl up and
Yeah,
find
all the way up.
that company officer.
I-
And they always do. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's how we empower them, is because right from day one, 10 minutes from now, you could be working
they're
all by
thrown
yourself,
into it. Yeah.
making life and death decisions on something that you've never experienced, and you better know what you did in training.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and same with on the ladder truck. I mean, you're supposed to work in pairs, but 3 people,
Right.
how do you make pairs out of 3 people?
Right.
Somebody's going to work by themselves.
Yeah.
It may not be right in the most hazardous spot, but it could be dangerous.
Yeah.
I mean, people die in those spots
And-
all the time.
And I'd like to, where I'm going with this, Chief, and we spoke about it briefly earlier, and I thought maybe you could just shed some light on it. You guys had a pretty significant incident that occurred
Yeah.
to your department. It wasn't your fire; it was a mutual aid fire.
Mutual aid fire.
And I'm sure you have a very good working relationship with all volunteer departments around the city of Newburgh.
Yep, for the most part.
Yeah.
Beacon is a small job. They have their
Across the river,
combination.
right?
Yep, they're
Yeah.
across the river.
Right.
We don't get to see them very often.
Right.
Stewart Airport, Castle Point,
Mhm.
West Point, they're all military
Right.
fire departments, which we do work with quite a bit. But all all the departments where we respond mutual aid all the time, the ones that get fires all the time,
Right.
they're all volunteer.
Right.
And, used to be we couldn't even communicate with them. And to some extent we still can't communicate with them. Our county's made big pushes in interoperability. They have a UHF radio plan that they expect everybody to follow.
Right.
And it doesn't get followed all the time.
Right.
And but yeah, that was a mutual aid fire. Our guys were there. We get called a lot more than we used to. Used to be a mutual aid fire was maybe once a month. We go sometimes 2 times in a shift.
Really?
And and we'll go weeks without, and then another one. But we do. What I'm getting at is, right now our average, we respond out of the city for fires more than we have mutual aid coming into the city, because right now we're still operating off Safer Grant. A lot of times we have, a 4th guy on a reg. That one extra guy makes a big difference.
Sure.
But they're expecting us, and we go out of the city, and our guys treat those fires just like they do our own.
Right.
We don't care who's there first.
Right.
We're gonna get there, and we're gonna do.
You're gonna go to work.
They're gonna go to work, and they
Right.
do it. And they went to this. It was a factory. It already had a significant explosion, so it was a pretty good fire. The majority of what was going on was in one open warehouse. So our engine showed up. They went inside with the host department's guys. So they were. It was 2 teams pushing 2.5s into this building. They had a lot of fire, and it was, very hot and very punishing. And they were in there taking care of this. The ladder truck crew, they were at the rear of the building. They were ordered to go inside. There was workers missing. Reported 2 workers missing. They walked in. They said you could see, light smoke condition, not a lot of heat, no big deal. But they kept their training. They had their masks on, even though it was light smoke. How many times back,
Oh, I get it. Yeah.
Before people realized smoke was bad for you, we wouldn't have had a mask on. These guys had their masks on. They did that. They had no idea what was taking place on the other end of the building.
Right.
As it went bad, they radioed out. It's getting real bad. We're backing out. They were 100 and I think they said 100 and something feet in with these 2.5s, and it wasn't a straight run. They were around equipment. They backed those hose lines out. As they got to the end of the building, the place lit up. Now the guys that were in the back, even though it was one big open room, the wind was in their favor. It was blowing from their backs toward the guys on the engine. They had no idea that things were going to turn bad.
Go south. Yeah.
And it did. And long story short, those guys, they were 40 feet in. They were engulfed in this fire. The guys on the engine, as it exploded. Now I wasn't there early on. I was called in when things went real bad. There's guys hurt, and they still went back in to look for these guys from the truck. The truck officer got separated from his crew. This guy, he's the guy you want to have with you when things go bad, because he's level-headed. He couldn't do a thing. He lost his helmet. He got burned. He fell down a flight of stairs. He was hurt. He was still trying to get back in for his guys. 2 other guys in this big open warehouse were these pods where the offices were. They were only 1 story tall, plywood rooms where they did they had a lab and stuff like that. 8 by 8 rooms. So they ran behind it. They were on a search rope. They couldn't get out the way they came in. The rope burned through. They walked back behind these, and it's getting bad. They couldn't go anywhere. All of a sudden, they noticed that the smoke was lighter up near the ceiling. There was an opening about 10 feet up. So they worked together. One guy pushed the other guy up to the opening in this wall. That guy was taking a beating in that opening because that's a vent hole.
Sure.
He took the time to pull this other guy up with him. The crew outside didn't even have a water source in the back yet. They were just getting a hydrant established. They were operating on tank water. A senior guy, that saw what was happening, yanked a hand line off and just wet him down. So he had time to stand in that hole to straddle the wall and pull this second guy up. Mm-hmm. They jumped 15, 20 feet to the ground.
Wow.
They had no choice. They were stuck up,
Right.
fire venting around them. This guy was holding it off with tank water. We had one more guy. Nobody was hearing him. He was troubleshooting his radio. He kept his head. He took refuge in one of these offices. He kept going out. Things were bad. Closed the door. Try Mayday again. And, there was guys looking for him.
So he was
9
calling
minutes.
out Maydays.
Nobody knew he was stuck by himself for 9 minutes. And
With no communication.
no communication.
Nobody could hear him.
Nobody could hear him, and it's something that, we always knew, that you got to operate, you got to be able to talk to other fire departments.
Yeah.
You may not want to hear what they say, but you're still going to follow that chain of command.
Right.
You're not going to take orders from a lieutenant that doesn't know you. You're going to take orders from your lieutenant, who's taking orders from
Right.
the incident commander, which is unified. So we had it, off of our limited budget. We've been trying to convert over to this other radio system. It's slow going, but we did have a couple radios. Problem is, the crew had to remove their Newburgh radio to put this county radio on. They wear them under their coat. Both companies were at another call when this one came in. They didn't have time to do it. And they were there quick. But we've never had really an issue where Newburgh radio, where you couldn't talk to each other.
Right.
We're usually close enough. Well, we're every time we go out, we're going a little farther and farther and farther. So they installed a vehicle repeater, which would boost the signal, and you could hear. Well, it operates on line of sight. Well, the crown in the road, they couldn't reach the car. Nobody really thought about it. We've always gotten away with it.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
This one time,
Yeah.
it almost didn't work out.
So we brother in a building for 9 minutes, no communications, calling a Mayday.
Yep.
Keeping his head though.
And he kept his head.
Right.
He self-rescued. He got himself out. And we didn't. He was burned. A lot of the guys were. Four of them were burned.
Yeah.
And but he kept his head. They all did. They kept their heads. They fell back on their training, and it becomes automatic. But mostly you see it in a career. Volunteers, you only do it once a week, and every week it's something different. Where in the paid, you kind of run out of. You're required to do training every shift.
Right.
Well, it gets old, and you just kind of do it. You do it,
Mm-hmm.
And there's guys that are really into it all the time training, and there's guys that, we've done it, but they still do it. And this is where it paid off. They do this stuff enough times
Right.
that it's just automatic. He
Second
troubleshot
nature.
his radio.
Yeah.
He was able to self-rescue, even as efforts were undergoing. We had the guys from our department that were hurt were trying to get back in to get to him. Of course, mutual aid was, the fast team was there. They were all trying to get into him. Everybody was making their way in, trying to get to him. And his training got him out. He self-rescued. He was able to do it. But it was a long time before they even realized he was still missing, because you listen to the radio transmissions and they thought he was out. No, we got the guy out. Well, who is it?
Right.
Oh, it's so-and-so. Well, do you have this guy? No, but we have this guy. He's the one that was missing. I don't think he was the one that, and they were going back and forth. And all of a sudden he appeared,
Hey everybody, it's Robert from National Fire Radio. Thanks for tuning in. Catch up with us on social media. We got
SoundCloud, National Fire Radio, YouTube, National Fire Radio, Instagram, National Fire Radio, and
not least,
Facebook, National Fire Radio. Guys, check us out. Take care. Be safe.